look, people are insecure right now. And people like coming to easy conclusions. And when there's an affordability crisis in a city like New York or a city like Toronto, and the answer to why there's an affordability crisis is a little complicated and it's boring and it's bureaucratic and you have to understand a lot of stuff to really get the full scope of it. Or someone can say, oh, we put in 500,000 Indians and they all bought the apartments and that's why the affordability crisis is happening in Toronto, which is not true. And there's stats to back that up, but it feels true. And when you see that repeated back to you on an Instagram reel, you're like, oh, yeah, of course, it's the Indians.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Hopeful Majority. I'm your host, Manu. Meel. If you're sick and tired of how outrageous our politics have become and you're tired of tribalism, this is the place for you. Today, I've got on a fascinating YouTuber, content creator, cultural commentator, all of the above, a qualified man to tell us, and by the way, he's from Canada, Art Chad. And if you haven't checked out his YouTube channel, you should go check it out. And I wanted to have this conversation because I think there's a really interesting phenomenon about online culture building. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with Art Chad. I appreciate you taking a look. Hang on to the conversation, and I'll catch you on the other side. Art Chad, welcome to The Hopeful Majority, my friend.
All right, thank you for the nice intro.
Yes, it was straight off the dome. You said in one of your videos that you can have power or you can have meaning, but you can't have both. Tell me more.
Power or meaning without not both. I think that people optimize too much, especially young people now, optimize too much for power. I think young people, more than ever I've seen in my lifetime, are very, very hyper aware of the mistakes they make and how good they can do. I think there's a lot of brain worms in young people's minds about optimization, about success, and what success looks like. And I think we often quantify those things to just numbers, right? Whether it's it's quantity. It's like it's not about falling in love with somebody. It's about how many women can you sleep with, or how many women like you. It's not about if your job is meaningful. It's about if how much what your income is, what your salary is, and those things are tantamount to success now and to value. But I think the real meaning comes from something deeper that you can't quantify.
So as I told you in the pre-conversation, I had a great conversation with PF Young, and folks that are listening to this can check out that episode and that conversation. And there's a lot in the discourse right now about young content creators like yourself, especially men, who are quote unquote terminally online, as you've described yourself and as others have described you, and the culture that they're building. Take me into why you actually got into YouTube content creation, because I want people to better understand what actually drives the people that they listen to, because people like you have a lot of influence and power now, whether you like it or not. So I'm curious, what drives you and what actually got you into this game? Why did you join the swamp that is YouTube?
I would say the interpersonal answers that where I lived at the time, when I started doing YouTube in Halifax, Nova Scotia, there's not a lot going on there. And I wanted to connect with people. And I wanted to, YouTube, just making a video and writing something and getting it out in the world and having people see it. And whether those people are small or big creators, it's a good way to build connection with people. It's a good way to get on other people's radar. I felt like it was the best way to make a community at the time, was to get connected to people through YouTube. So that was my first impulse. I also think I'm part of a wave of online content creators that are sort of the first, I don't want like post YouTubers. And what I mean by that is when YouTube started and you were internet famous, you were defined by the platform, right? Like Smosh isn't like a comedy group. Smosh is like a YouTube comedy group. And being a YouTuber implied a certain distinction, a certain style. And you were first and foremost a YouTuber. Now, at this point, like social media is just media. There's no distinction now. There's no internet world versus mainstream media. It's all one thing. And now I feel like you can treat YouTube not like, I don't see myself as a YouTuber in the same way like Smosh was, or or like JonTron or people from like 10 years ago. I see myself as a writer doing stuff on YouTube, or like a podcaster or an artist using YouTube as my platform. But I'm not a YouTuber in and of itself. And I think I'm part of this first wave that just is, everybody I know who works in the space that I'm friends with are all nonfiction writers and artists, and we just all use YouTube as our platform.
That's interesting. I mean, I was just talking to you about this before we hit record, that you, in this post YouTube YouTuber wave, you sort of remind me, and your colleagues and like your other YouTube friends and stuff like that remind me of sort of the coffee shops in the 1800s where you have, Karl Marx talking to his friend, and you've got Voltaire in France, and you've got, folks like Nietzsche talking about their ideas and integrations, and these ideas are not yet mainstream. They're very much sort of in this wrestling attention economy. And it sounds like YouTube is just sort of the replacement of that coffee shop. But at heart, you see yourself as someone that is creating cultural ideas and concepts. Is that right? That you almost sort of see yourself as a cultural artist and curator?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, the like when I write a video, I don't really intend to give this academic researched, something that could be submitted as a paper. I intend to like have an idea, or basically what I've been thinking about that month, and sort of distill it down into something that's comprehensible, and give it to people, and just like conversations I have with people on the space, or people in my studio in Toronto, the conversations we've been having. I just want to like just distill those ideas down, and make it coherent and put it out in the world. And sometimes, sometimes it's like I miss the mark. Sometimes I've there's shit I've written like 3 years ago where I was like, fuck, I was like way too on the nose 3 years ago. I don't know, maybe it's luck, but that is, I don't know. I like the idea of that though. I like the idea of YouTube and social media having the potential to be this space where you can exchange ideas and build each other's work. It's not just like terminally. It's not just like isolating. It's not just online. It's a space where serious
It's vibrant. It's
thinking
vibrant.
has happened.
So you're on a podcast and a platform where we've had political leaders, we've had presidential candidates, we've had people like General Stanley McChrystal, who like led Joint Special Operations Command of the United States and wrote books on character, and we've got people like you,
That's
and and
wild.
and 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 and, and I don't actually say that in a disparaging way. I say that in that this coffee shop that is YouTube, this idea creation engine, has this fascinating egalitarianism about it, where if you just grind harder than, let's say, Vivek Ramaswamy, he might have a more quote unquote illustrious career than you might, and yet you can actually influence more people than he would. So, do you ever feel that responsibility? And does that ever sort of cross your mind? And do you ever think about that?
I think about it a lot more than I used to now that I have a bigger following. I think I used to chase money a lot more when I was getting started, because ultimately, like, you need to make things sustainable. And I used to be way more fixated on virality and making an income off of it. And now that I sort of have that, I feel far more open to like be as honest with myself as I can and not get audience captured. Like, there was a point where I have a lot of conservative fans. I have a big conservative audience. I'm not a conservative content creator, but I think I'm very like conservative coded in a lot of my videos. And I
What does
know
that mean?
that
What does it mean to be conservative coded?
I don't know. I talk a lot about like the gym. I'm just like a very like mask white dude.
Isn't that sad that you talking about the gym, or you talking about Gen Z's crisis of like labubus, right? And you talking about like young men is makes you conservative coded because you described yourself as a class first leftist. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Huh.
like, you just, I
Does
don't
that
know.
ever
It's
irritate you that you get labeled as conservative coded even though your politics are not necessarily conservative?
it doesn't it doesn't irritate me because I think that it's better to be if you try to signal too far left, I think it puts you up on the chopping block for when you mess up, you can really get canceled. I
Mm,
don't necessarily believe cancel culture is as big of a deal as it used to be, but I am anti cancel culture. Um, but if you signal like I want people to think I'm farther right than I actually am, because it gives me a position to like basically say and do what I want, and not have this massive expectation of being a very safe creator or being somebody who's like very very careful with their words. I have an opportunity to like be edgy,
yeah.
say things that in a different context would draw a lot of ire, but because I say it, it's not as bad. And ultimately, like I'm not right wing. I'm not going to pander to like too many right wing ideas.
Sorry, so I took us on a tangent, but you said this really important thing, which is you used to be much more focused on virality, but today you're much more focused on what you're interested in talking about, being honest with yourself. And one of the terms that I've pushed forward through the show is the outrage industrial complex. And it's this idea that outrage drives everything in terms of online incentives. And especially if you're a content creator, you want to be the first one to jump. Charlie Kirk got tragically assassinated. In 5 seconds, put out your reaction video so you can drive followers. How did you make that shift from virality to honesty? And what is your advice to younger creators that are navigating that arc? Because I think that the outrage industrial complex, which is like very much driven by virality, is a big reason why, frankly, we're in this shit show in the first place.
It's tough because it does pay off. It absolutely pays off. There's you are faced as somebody doing anything online. You're just faced constantly with the opportunity to sell out to one side, to become very dogmatic and polemic, and it will reward you. Look at Osmond Gold was a gaming streamer. He's now the most he's the biggest streamer on I don't know if he's still on Twitch or he got banned or if he's on YouTube. I don't know where he streams. But because he went right, and he's not uniquely that far right, but he just says like he doesn't think about what he says. He just says what's on his mind. He's very reactionary in a literal sense. And he's been rewarded for it. And he will get rewarded for it. But I don't think we'll look back on Osmond Gold in 60 years as one of the brightest political minds of the 2020s. I think you have to look at it like that, as this sort of like this long term game of if you don't want to do the outrage shit, you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot in terms of growth. You're not gonna grow as fast as if you grifted, but you can build a long term career on being honest, being sincere, always giving your best thoughts, always working the hardest you can. Do you know Josh Citarella?
No.
He's a great example. He's a friend of mine.
What's
He's
his
an
last name?
artist. Josh Citarella.
Citarella. Okay.
CIT. Yeah, Citarella. He's got a really big podcast now called Doom Scroll.
Okay. I'm gonna check.
And I've known him for a couple of years, and he's in his late 30s. He spent, he was an artist, he was a researcher, he was a teacher. He's a Substack writer. He co-wrote this book. He did all this stuff that was very like underground. And now in his late 30s, he launches this podcast, and within a year, the podcast is at 100K subs. He's getting
right now.
Yeah, Kyle Kalinske, Hassan Piker, Andrew Callahan, Anna Kasparian. Like he's getting these massive guests. The episodes are getting 200,000, 300,000, almost a million views because he's trustworthy. He's built a career over 20 years of not like people know who he is. He's not going to grift. He's not going to chase virality. He's just out there to do like the most honest work he can. And that's ultimately like the career you want. You want a career that's long and respected rather than just, being a flash in the pan.
That's a really cool insight into your psychology because I'm spending a lot of my time trying to understand this industrial complex. I mean, you mentioned someone like Josh, right? And I just looked at some of his content just as you were speaking. I mean, yeah, he's got Crystal Ball, he's got Anna Kasparian, he's got Hassan Piker, he's got Andrew Callan. As you said, he's got all these interesting folks, and each episode's got 200K plus. And if you say he made 109,000 subscribers, it seems in a year, that's awesome. What do you think then ultimately drives someone like you, someone like Josh. What I'm hearing is a long, authentic, honest career, right? Not sort of being a flash in the pan. But why do you think that logic doesn't portend to someone that just baits for outrage? Like, what do you think drives them versus what drives you? What's the difference between the viral content creator and the nuanced content creator?
Man, I think it's feedback loops, it's audience capture, it's perverse incentives. You get somebody like Sneako's sort of a good example. I think Sneako's or Andrew Tate, even Andrew Tate's another great example of like this type of content that 3 years ago was massively popular. I mean, Andrew Tate's way past the peak of his career. Same with Sneako, who like they come on the scene, they get rewarded financially, they get rewarded with an audience, and I'm sure they're getting tons and tons and tons of glazing from people who are agreeing with them, who are when they're going on about Western women or whatever the manosphere red pill stuff was about, right? They're getting so much positive feedback, and then they also have the flip side where anybody who doesn't like them is wrong, and what they're saying must be so correct that it's dangerous if they're getting so much hate. So they have all these feedback loops that just drives you farther and farther and farther. Like, you're getting so wealthy, your audience is so big, you're famous, people are recognizing you on the streets, and you just delude yourself into thinking that you're right. You delude yourself into thinking that what you're saying is of the utmost importance.
Because you use external validators to prove that to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And then, come 3 years and it's like that shit's all, no one's watching Fresh and Fit. No one's watching like Andrew Tate's stream. I mean, sure, people are, but it's not like what it used to be. You're not seeing Andrew Tate on every other TikTok, right? The wave has crashed. It's crested. And, their career, like no one looks at Andrew Tate as an honest, very principled, true, good thinker. They look at him as a grifter who capitalized on a moment in time, made a bunch of money, and that's it.
Do you think that the average consumer can actually tell the difference between a grifter online and maybe someone like you?
No, I mean, I can't half the time. I get I fall for so many people. It wasn't even until with a lot of the right wing commentators when I used to be far, not like really right wing when I was younger, but like when I was like 19, 20, like I was watching, like Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro.
Sure. Jordan Peterson is your like country fellow native.
Yeah, I mean, I still like Peterson's old work.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm totally sympathetic towards it, and I didn't even really turn like. I always thought they were really good, and even when I didn't agree with them, I was like, oh well, at least they're very principled and honest. And then when Trump, I mean, I'm not a big Trump guy. I really don't like Trump. It's just like a threat to liberal democracy first and foremost. And when Trump, especially after 2020, and especially into 2023, 2024, watching all these supposed, free speech absolutists, and I thought that's what we agreed on. We were like, oh yeah, Ben Shapiro's a free speech absolutist, so am I. And then watching them back Trump, somebody who's actively, disappearing students from Colombia for supporting Palestine, and just supporting a president who just goes against all of their values because it's the correct financial decision to make. It's lucrative. They're right wing. They're Republican. There's no world in which Ben Shapiro was like, well, actually, Trump I don't like, even though I'm still right wing. And watching them do that, I was like, fuck, these guys lost the plot. I don't know how much I can trust Ben Shapiro or any of these people that like really be honest. I mean, and at the time, somebody would have said that to me 8 years ago, and someone said as an idiot forever liking those people. But now it's just more and more obvious. It comes with time, right? If you're telling a lie, you can't lie forever. People will find out.
Who are some of the people on the left that fall into that category of grifters for you?
Left-wing grifters. Maybe I'm trying to think what do I watch for like left-wing content now? See, I listen to a lot of Kyle Kalinske, but he's definitely not. He's like, do you know much about his funding structure? He's never even taken a sponsor. He only
it's all subscribers, right?
Yeah, it's Patreon and YouTube AdSense. He's never taken money outside of those two avenues.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, the issue with there's not a lot of money on the left outside of like crowdfunding and peer support. Where on the
What do you
right,
mean
there's
by that? Why is that not true?
I just there's not a lot of in the same way like there's so many right wing organizations that will fund you, that will throw money at you, companies that will throw money at you, crypto, sports betting, APAC. Like,
What
there's
do you
just
think
these
about what
mad.
Brian Tyler Cohen? Did you see what he was building up? He created it. Do you know who Brian Tyler Cohen is?
No,
Okay, he's a very big 5 million subscribers, left wing content creator, more sort of in the center left camp. And there was a big sort of article written about him in the Washington Post that basically talked exactly about this. He built an infrastructure to actually pay left wing content creators and build them up. Problem with it was they were demanding a lot from the content creators in terms of what they say and what they didn't say. But it's interesting how that infrastructure you see as being something that more naturally occurred on the right as opposed to the left, because I don't think there's anything about the ideological correlation between those two camps and whether or not you can make more money online. Why do you think that is?
I don't. I don't know. I mean, I know that was the Democrat dark, the Taylor Lorenz article, right? The
Yep,
Democrat dark
yep,
money. Yeah.
yep. It's that one.
Um. I mean, I it just depends on whose interests you're supporting. I think if you're, center right, or like you're supporting the interests of tech, and now tech is sort of right libertarian coded. That flipped really fast because they used to be. I mean, tech was only left wing for the optics, and then as soon as it became advantageous for big tech to kind of switch to a libertarian right, it switched because they're going to chase the money. I mean that's what the money is. That's the systems you're supporting. If you're like a far left content creator, if you're a content creator advocating for UBI or advocating for like AI ethics, like not halting AI. I don't believe in that, but like sort of putting the guardrails in place before AI starts replacing jobs. Anything that's very like left, like not liberal, but like left coded. There's just no. I don't know. There's not many organizations that are gonna throw money at you. There's not a lot of incentive to do that
Yeah.
stuff. And I find that people who do that stuff are doing it out of like their own beliefs. Like Josh is a leftist. Josh is not well funded. Josh is doing it because that's what he believes in. Kyle Kalinske, um, I know, but yeah, Breaking Points obviously isn't like super far left, but
Yep.
like Crystal Ball, yeah,
I do think it's going to change actually on the left. I mean, especially after the last election, I think a lot of political strategists are now going to start seeing. I just think the left never actually caught up to these mediums as being politically powerful. I think that was it. I think the right understood from early on that if you're winning the podcast game, you're winning in college campuses, you're winning on YouTube, that this isn't just some like coffee shop of ideas, but it actually is real influence, right? In terms of votes, in terms of impact. I mean, the left keeps saying we're going to like build our own Joe Rogan, which I think is just not going to be possible. But I think you're going to see a lot more of that on the left. What do you think about that view?
I mean, Jesus Christ, I hope so. It's you want to talk about consensus collapse, right? The amount of people that are in politics or in mainstream media that have just no grasp of any online platform is truly baffling. I have a friend who has a YouTube channel, Wow Mao, and he got you probably heard the story about 2 years ago. A bunch of U.S. military documents got leaked in regards to an offensive in Ukraine against Russia, and
Okay.
they were leaked in his Discord, and he's a
Oh,
21 year
really?
old.
Oh,
Yeah,
this was in his Discord. Wait,
yeah.
was this the one where was this the one where that guy where the FBI like went and like found him in a forest or something, a National Guards person, or is this different?
I don't know if it's the same guy. His name was
Okay.
Jack, the guy who leaked the
Okay.
documents.
Okay.
And this had nothing to do with my friend. It was just his Discord server that this got leaked in. So he got hit up he did a New York Times interview. He did a New Yorker interview. He did a Washington Post interview. The question they all asked was, what is Discord? The very first question, right? So they don't even know what Discord is. And
Yeah,
I
it
saw,
doesn't surprise me, honestly.
it's insane. I saw this interview, this transcription of this interview between a former secretary for the Department of Homeland Security and NPR talking about the shooting at the ICE facility. And the Secretary of Homeland Security says something along the lines of, these kids are on websites we've never heard of. Websites like Steam and Halo, they exist in a different world, right? Like she's probably, I don't
Yeah.
know, 40 or 50 and thinks that Steam is some it radicalizing
Yeah.
like online form.
Man, I know that
So
Steam thing, man. Whenever I'm on Steam, it's fucking crazy.
all those furry porn
Yeah.
games. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's insane, man. I just don't think I think the left is famously bad at capitalizing on things. The left does not understand the threat of AI. The left does not
You
understand
know,
how platforms work. It's just
so
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
it's funny because when I talk to people on the right, they say the same thing about their own side. Like the right will oftentimes say the left feels much more organized. The left feels like it's got an idea of how to manipulate culture. I mean, the right will say cancel culture became so big because while the left might not have YouTube, they've got Hollywood. So, I don't know how much of that is accurate, but maybe it's that the left understood mainstream media better, the right understood alternative media better. And now I think to your point, it's all sort of merging. And I think you're actually going to see both sides playing on both. The problem with all this is that I think the people that get screwed are the American people because most of these people are grifters across the board and they're driven by sort of outrageous incentives. And to your point, I don't think most people can frankly tell the difference between a viral content creator and a nuanced content creator. And so then while you're out here building your honest career path and you're sort of playing the long game and you're trying to be true to yourself, you've got all these people that are actively gaining more influence. And I think it's important for people like you, irrespective of your ideas and whether or not I agree with them, to have a bigger voice because you're actually trying to stand by what you say and you're not focused on clickbait. But that's a serious challenge. And in some ways, I think about this show and building that up. I mean, the people we know, the networks we have, we could grow this thing so much faster if we really wanted to. But that's a real challenge. So I just think about how to give the nuanced content creator, irrespective of party lines, a greater platform. That's what I'm really curious about at this time. Because I think people would actually reward it, frankly. Like I think division and polarization is getting to a breaking point level. I mean, we see this in our demand for our college chapters. Like when I started, in 2017, nobody gave a shit about bridge building. Now, like everybody is like, let's build the chapter. And so I think the consumer base is there too. So I'm curious what you think.
I definitely agree. I think with young people especially, we're sort of all facing the same challenges in a way that I don't think people my age in like 2016 were.
Yep.
I guess maybe we were, but just to a higher degree now. Like it's no longer about identity. I don't see a lot of people who are I don't talk to a lot of black people or trans people or gay people or whatever who are obsessed with their own identity in the way that people think that they would be. It's just like affordability is fucked up. Sorry, can I curse?
Yeah. You've been
Okay,
doing it
cool.
all show.
Sorry,
It would be too
it's
late
so
now.
it's so baked into my lexicon.
Yeah.
Yeah, the affordability crisis, the housing crisis, the climate crisis, the fact that getting married and having kids is now a luxury. The youth unemployment rate is skyrocketing. Jobs are disappearing through AI. There's so many issues that are like across the board have a blanket effect on anybody under 30 or under 35, no matter how right wing or left wing you are. And I think as long as like the right and left are concerned about the exact same things, it's only
Yes.
when you get into like the lunatic fringe that they can't have a conversation. But like, I don't really want in the same way, like if the far right is like race scientists and the far left are people who will think America should be like nuked.
Yeah.
Um, we don't want those people anyway,
Yeah.
and that's a very, very, very small fringe. Everybody in between is like, well, shit. The world's we're sort of entering unprecedented territory, and we can definitely work together on a few of these things.
I one of the principles that motivates Bridge USA is that oftentimes people like ask us, "Oh, you guys must be a bunch of ideological moderates, right?" And you talk about sort of this political spectrum. And our view is that there's actually a new divide, and it's not about left right. It's a divide on temperament between people that are apathetic and people that are highly engaged. It's between people that are open minded and people that are closed minded. And you talk a lot about how even if you politically disagree with someone, you have a lot more in common with someone that is engaged in politics than someone that's completely offline. Tell me more about that, because it's almost like you're saying that if you're in our generation, you're Gen Z, actually have that conversations on the right or the left, because you have a lot more in common than someone that's completely unplugged and disengaged. So can you tell me more about that?
Um, if you're getting drawn to thinking about the world politically, if you're getting drawn into politics, you're thinking about a lot of the same issues, right? Immigration. You could look at that. You could take a left wing criticism of immigration would be that it's like capitalists bringing in cheap labor to replace local workers, right? And then if the right wing argument would be, some sort of cultural replacement, or like, oh, there's a cultural incongruence and like they don't fit well in the Western culture and it's causing a higher crime rate or whatever stat they're going to bring up, right? Yeah, you're both engaged with the same thing. You're both thinking about an issue,
Right.
and you're kind of coming to the same conclusion that immigration can go too far or what have you, right? Or if you're thinking about affordability, it's the same thing. If you're both concerned about the affordability crisis, you can talk about that. You don't have to be divided because you disagree on the cause.
That's really interesting. Yeah. The more and more I talk to people like you, the more I really want to think about how to build that infrastructure to support the nuanced content creator across the board. Because I think you just hit it on the head, right? Like, nuanced content creators that might politically disagree have a lot more common than the viral content creators, because your ends are fundamentally different and you value different things. Like, the fact that you came on this show and you don't know much about us from a YouTube standpoint, and you're like, I don't know what I'm getting into, but I'm happy to have the conversation, right? It says a lot about you and your character. And I am very interested in supporting people like you, because I think the American people, and I guess you're Canadian, and American people don't dominate the entire world. So I'll say people in general, the world, are like exhausted by the loud fringes, and they're exhausted by the grifters. And when you actually like listen to some of your videos, they're really interesting and they're curious. And I can tell that you've thought about it a lot. So what is holding people like you back from having a bigger voice? Not again because I agree with your ideas necessarily, but because I agree with your temperament and your approach, which is, I think, the real divide in our politics.
I mean, I would agree. Just beforehand, I would agree with that definitely. My last video was about that actually. Is that it's like the divide is openness. I mean, the argument I make in my most recent video is that, like, because so many institutions are dominantly liberal and like progressive, that to sort of to fall into that political camp in the context of like academia, where in the 1960s what you would have been radical, in the 1950s it would have been like a very radical or a very like transgressive place to be. Now it's just sort of like, okay, that's what you're expected. You're a college student, you're going to be liberal. That's the dogma. That's the status quo. And that's not like a judgment on liberalism. It's just like the temperament thing.
Yep.
Of like, it takes an open person to sort of be able to like break out of the mold and have a conversation with people or engage with ideas that might be transgressive or might be challenging to like the social status quo.
So what's holding you back?
There's not a market. It's just not as marketable as being outrageous. Like, I could go on TikTok and maybe I'm sure if I put effort into this, I could pull it off. I posted a TikTok every day on just some like mega conspiratorial stuff and was just as outrageous as I possibly could be, and said all the right things to like, just do outrage engagement farming. I could get massive. It would be like I could do it formulaically and get massive.
I want to push on this a little bit. Is it that, because I think you and I are aligned broadly, is it that there's not a market for it, or is it that the algorithms privilege a certain type of engagement over another?
I think the algorithms are changing. I think they used to a lot more. YouTube seems to have gotten a bit better. Instagram, I don't really think so. Instagram is still very like, if you go on Instagram Reels and scroll,
Yep.
like if you're like a normal dude and you go into a blank Instagram account and scroll, you're like 15 scrolls away from some sort of like conspiracy like podcast clip of the sort of like an Alex Jones clip or a Nick Fuentes clip. Like it just comes up so fast. No matter who you are. TikTok, I don't know how the algorithm works. TikTok, there's like, it seems like it's really heavy censorship, and it seems like there's no censorship on it at all sometimes. But I don't know. I think it's that, look, people are insecure right now. And people like coming to easy conclusions. And when there's an affordability crisis in a city like New York or a city like Toronto, and the answer to why there's an affordability crisis is a little complicated, and it's boring and it's bureaucratic, and you have to understand a lot of stuff to really get the full scope of it. Or someone can say, oh, we put in 500,000 Indians and they all bought the apartments, and that's why the affordability crisis is happening in Toronto, which is not true. And there's stats to back that up, but it feels true. And when you see that repeated back to you on an Instagram reel, you're like, oh yeah, of course it's the Indians.
Yeah.
Or in New York, it's like whatever the answer
it's
is,
all
right?
By the way, as an Indian, it's always the Indians. You know, it's I wish we had that level of cultural prominence. I'll tell you one thing, you know, so my view on this is rapidly changing. I think actually the opportunity window for people like you is quite strong right now. Here's why. After the Charlie Kirk assassination, so we have college chapters across the country, and one of the things we like to do is rapid response. Like, what that means is what the activists are really good at is they know how to jump on stuff and weaponize it for their cause. People love bridge building. No one disagrees with the idea that we have to bridge across divides. But the problem is that people just don't think it's possible. So you have to actually like see it in action. And the problem is no one actually sees the bridge builders when the shit is really hitting the fan. Like, where were the Bridge USA people at Columbia, right? Now they're there, but where were they when it actually happened, right? Because that's when the news is focused. So right after the tragic assassination, and I knew Charlie, we had tens, if not 20 chapters, I think 25 to be precise, host rapid response events across the country. And these events were just filled, man, with students from across the board, conservatives, liberals, having these conversations, wanting to listen. We then created a bunch of content. We were all over the news. We then had a clip go viral. And Christian, if you could put that clip up really quickly right now for the listeners on Instagram, that viral one, where it's one of our Bridge USA students disagreeing with Charlie, but doing it in a really civic way. And it went absolutely crazy. I think, to me, it's not that there isn't a market for it. I think the thing is that people have a lot more capacity to dictate what the algorithms push for than they think, because it's all about engagement. And so I think a part of it is like you need a shift in the consumer base in terms of what you're valuing. And the other piece is that I just think people listen to stuff that is countercultural and unique and interesting. And like, I think the stuff that you're doing now is actually more nuanced and more interesting than someone shouting about some stupid shit for 30 seconds. And I think that's boring now. You know, it's like the same way Tate fell off the map. You know, same way the other guy that you talked about fell off the map. So that's my view. I'm curious where you stand on this. Because I think the future of the attention and idea economy literally depends on this question and what type of engagement is privileged.
I think when things get more serious, it seems to me like, I don't know if I'm wrong here because I've been outside of this for so long, but I feel like I talk about this constantly, is when I see conservatives still talk about, sorry, I don't want to say conservative, I don't want to like blanketly paint a picture here, but when I see, you know, conservative people talk about like gender ideology stuff, it's like, okay, that was a concern for me 8 years ago, but now the temperature is so much higher, and that is not a real problem. It is just a problem that one can talk about and sort of engagement farm and create a lot of hubbub around, but it's not a real issue. And I think when things get more serious, it's like, you know, at one point, yeah, it was funny to watch Ben Shapiro like dismantle some student in a college lecture who thinks they're a dog. But it's like, okay, so someone just got assassinated. You know, we're having like an not unprecedented, but like a rise in political violence, a rise in mass shootings. There was the church yesterday in Michigan,
yeah,
and then there was another one the same day in Colorado, I think. There was two in 24 hours. There was two shootings.
Right when things get, hear about the second one, huh?
Yeah, there was two in 24 hours. It's insane. When things get this serious, right? It's like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, I don't want to hate people. I don't want to watch things on the internet that make me hate the other side. I want to get to know. We're all concerned about the same things ultimately. So I do hope you're right that it's like people are coming around to their senses and being like, damn, like, I don't want to be fed garbage that makes me hate people just to get engagement. I want to humanize people. I want to know that we're all on the same team, that we all believe in something.
So one of the places where you've demonstrated a lot of ideological curiosity is on this topic that you seem pretty interested about, which is Prospera, which is that city in Honduras, right? And I saw your coverage of it, and you infiltrated the city. You went in. You obviously have an opinion about the city and what's going on there, and sort of the colonial backdrop of what's happening. And yet, you did it in a way in which you weren't completely closed off to opposing arguments. So walk me a little bit through how you maintain sort of ideological convictions, but then walk the line on like temperamental and intellectual curiosity.
I I don't other people, and I think that's really important. Is that especially, I mean, first and foremost in politics, everyone, it's so easy to other the other side, to look at them as fundamentally different than you and to believe they're evil. And just throughout my life, I've never met I've met very, very, very few bad people. Like I can count on one hand the amount of people I've met where I'm like, oh, this guy is uniquely malevolent. And most people are just trying to survive. Like most people just, not many people are out there with malintent trying to destroy the world, right? The Prospera people aren't out there thinking about how they're going to, subjugate these villagers and expropriate the land. They're just out there trying to, I don't know, try something new, live better lives, create a better future. And you can get into the whole banality of evil argument there, which I'm totally sympathetic to. But I think it's a lot easier than you think to just talk to people. When you talk to people with an open heart, with a calm voice, when you listen to what people have to say, right? You can really humanize people. You can really get their side of the story and come to some common ground, and they'll also respect you more, right? I'm not saying everyone is this pure soul and you just have to like be nice to them and everyone's really nice all the time. Like obviously people out there, people make mistakes. People do bad things. But right, if you're gonna critique power, if you're gonna like critique the other side, if you want to find common ground, if you want to like point out problems, you have to do it in an earnest way. I don't think you can't just attack and expect any good feedback.
That last piece I think is really important because a lot of people that disagree with what you just said might say, yeah, but he doesn't actually know that the Prospera people are not fundamentally evil. He just kind of just assumes. Poor, naive, YouTuber. But the last piece that you said, I think, is a powerful piece, which is that your method of engaging the world actually allows you to get the feedback to refine your arguments and allow you to be a better actor. And that's like what I actually think is really powerful about your approach and in general the bridging approach is like the way you move about in the world in this manner as opposed to being ideologically rigid just allows you to have a much longer shelf life. That's at least my view.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like that's why there's the classic game theory, man. Play long term games with long term people. That's how you build a career. That's how you get invited back to play again. That's how you get interviews. That's the people who truly reach across the aisle aren't the people who attack everybody all the time. They're the people who are reasonable. You can have conversations with. And there's plenty of examples. I think it's only when you really start to dehumanize the other side that you lose that ability to reach across the aisle. You lose that ability to have conversations, to find common ground. And there's very few people that are lost. There's very, very few people that are irredeemable or unsavable. Most people, even like no matter how crazy they are, you can get them to a moderate, you can get them to a reasonable sort of agreement.
How do you respond to the argument that you only think most people are not redeemable because you're a straight white man that occupies more privilege in society?
How would I respond to that argument? Um,
Because that is I think the strongest argument against that view
it was is that like is you're saying
is that you can I think a lot of people on the left will especially make this argument that you can assume that most people are fundamentally redeemable because you're not, the victim of the same type of oppression that, a trans, individual might be. So you have a more open-minded view about the world. And so as a result, being open-minded is really open for the privileged, not for the many.
I mean, you can believe that. I don't think it's a very good thing to believe in. Like I maybe I'm bi. I live in a liberal city. I live in Toronto. Canada's a pretty liberal country, very multicultural. I don't encounter nor do I hear about a lot of like genuine hatred and bigotry and xenophobia here. I know in the States that does exist. I know there's parts of the South that still have like sundown towns or stuff like, there is that genuine uh, hatred, that sort of like low IQ genuine hatred still exists in the world, obviously. But I think it's no matter who you are, it's a bad position to adopt to assume that people are out to get you, right? Because I think most of the time people aren't, especially if you're on a university campus in a first world city, you're in London or San Francisco or New York or Chicago or Seattle or Miami or Toronto. I think it's safe to assume that like most people there don't want to hurt you. There's an argument to be made if you,
Yeah, that you're not in like intellectual Iraq.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think as a trans person, you can pretty much assume you're fine if you're on the Berkeley campus.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just like I'm sure I have privilege. I'm sure people have experienced things I've never experienced, but I just think it's just no matter what you do, don't go around expecting ire from people because of who you are. I mean, I've had plenty of. I've had identity based. I've had people push back on me for like where I'm from. Like people assume like I'm like a dumb hick from Nova Scotia. I got that all the time in university. I've experienced these things. It's like, I mean, everyone does, at some point. I guess it is, it's different if you're getting like if you're experiencing racism and stuff. But
Yeah. No, I appreciate you walking me through that because that's one of the primary questions I get about our work at scale is, you know, a straight white person can have the view that most people are not redeemable. And so hence you can be open-minded, have conversations, but how can person positionality? And I think it's important to sort of steel man a lot of those different pieces. And so I appreciate that. Last question, and here's why I want to take this as we wrap this up, because I've been really fascinated by this conversation, is that people are going to be interested, especially in our audience, of your view on Gen Z. And like you created this video that said most recently, I think, no, this one might have been 2 years ago, but I'm not sure. That was like, Gen Z is the most extreme generation. And you have this interesting line that I want to read, which is that when you combine rampant individualism with a lack of purpose and the extreme ability to get power, you get the most extreme generation. And when I was listening to that, as I walk back from like working out in the morning, I was thinking that that's a really interesting way for older generations to understand this generation. So can you dive into that more and explain why you see Gen Z as the most extreme generation?
it's an intersection of it's an intersection of like, economic issues, pressure, and also an acute awareness of what does well and what success is and how to optimize. And I think it creates people who are. I mean, there's also like the consensus collapse, echo chambers on the internet. It just creates people who can basically exist like solely in a bubble, who can, like I said earlier, just optimize for status, optimize for success, optimize for money. You can go to the gym and do this perfect science backed workout, and then go take SARMs and peptides and trenbolone because you believe that's what women like, because that's what the podcast told you, and you can consume all your entire media diet can be like looks maxing, right wing, very like red pill game theory stuff, like all about like power and how to win. And you can just go about your life being this total antisocial nutcase and get rewarded for it constantly with the media you consume and how you live your life. And I think people are very scared to make mistakes now. People are very scared to sort of ease back into life and to enjoy themselves and to like, live day by day. People are so future focused, and the world we were born into begets that. It's a lot of us can't afford homes. If you're in a first world city in Canada or the US, you can't afford a home if you're like under 30. Homes in Toronto cost $1.3 million. I know in New York and San Francisco,
Yeah.
famously,
No.
right? You can't afford a home. And like I said earlier, marriage, kids, all these things that used to be a given to you as a person growing up in the first world are now luxuries. They're not givens anymore. And it sort of feels like if you are not the absolute most optimized version of yourself that you can be, you will fail. And your only two options are to be a ruthless killer or to fail. And no one has time to, I don't know. Like I'm in my mid-20s, man. No one has time to go out dancing and to make mistakes and to fuck up and to live life. It just seems like everyone I know my age is on Vyvanse working 80 hours a week.
I will say that I really appreciate that psychological take in this generation, but I think I got to fly you out to San Francisco or something. You need to hang out with slightly more chill people because I think there are plenty that do have time to dance. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate your time, especially if you're new to this channel and you're listening to this conversation. You thought it was interesting and insightful. Check out the conversation of PF Young, who's someone that is in the same world as Art Chad. And I think there's a lot of creators out there that are not viral creators, that are nuanced creators, that are starting to build out followings. I think the market is there. And if you're someone that's listening to the Hopeful Majority and you're curious about Gen Z, you're curious about the ways in which YouTube is evolving and the ways in which this culture is going to shift, I think folks like Art Chat have a really fascinating insight into that. So I appreciate you listening. And every Monday, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your content, you can find people like us because we have a real opportunity to shift culture. So Art Chad, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. It was a blast.